Josie Arlington was a famous Storyville Madam whose body's been resting in an unmarked location for over a century. Now, local author Marita Crandall is fighting to get her put back in her intended resting place. In order to tell this story, we must first introduce you to Marita, who's a character of her own. Born in Germany, she moved to California as a young girl. As an adult, she came to New Orleans on business and stayed.
I just fell in love with the city. So many people have that same story where it just sucks you in, and I couldn't believe it existed. So these were put on poles.
Nearly 18 years ago, Marita opened up Boutique du Vampire, one of the only vampire shops in the country, the only one in New Orleans.
We kind of consider ourselves a magical concierge. So when people come into our shop, we send them to all the other magical shops there are, and tours and adventures.
Marita even appears to have fangs that she says are real.
It's crazy.
3 years ago, she opened a speakeasy with absinthe flowing.
If you can light something on fire, why wouldn't you?
You need a password or a membership to gain access.
You get a different kind of high from drinking absinthe.
Marita has always been a writer. She was in the process of writing a vampire historical novel and was looking for a madam for the main character to have an affair with. That's when she stumbled upon Josie Arlington.
I don't know if it's part of New Orleans' magic. I almost feel like she found me, and she's been biding her time until the time was right to come out of the woodwork again and tell her story.
Marita was only going to make Josie the love interest of the main character and mentioned Josie to a bartender she had known for 18 years.
I, out of the blue, told her my next book is going to be about Josie Arlington, which wasn't even true.
And I asked her, why do you want to write a book about Josie?
And I said, well, I think she's a good person to have as an affair for him.
And I said, well, that's my great-great aunt.
And when she told me that, I thought, how is this even possible?
Josie's given name was Mary Dubler. As a teen in the 1800s, she missed curfew, and her strict German immigrant parents turned her away. So she turned to prostitution in Storyville, which was New Orleans' red light district at the time.
Kind of just picked up her bootstraps, and for the time that she lived, that profession was legal. If you were uneducated, what kind of job would you do?
Still going by Mary, she worked her way up from a prostitute to a madam, but it still wasn't a good situation.
It was a horrible, horrible, horrible brothel. It was the worst. It was the most notoriously dangerous brothel in the entire area.
And that would have been fine if her lover hadn't murdered her brother. Mary then ran off with new lover Tom Brady. They stayed at the majestic Arlington Hotel in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Mary was so taken by the hotel that she changed her name to Josie Arlington. She returned to Storyville, changed her image, and transformed her brothel into a respectable establishment. Well, as respectable as you could make it.
She turned really a bad situation for herself into a glamorous one, and into a glamorous one for the city. I mean, her brothel was so palatial and gorgeous, and the details that she provided, and also just the atmosphere was something where people wanted to go there and enjoy themselves in other ways.
Like one of the forefathers of jazz, Jelly Roll Morton often played there for guests.
They wanted to be around these beautiful paintings and the Turkish room and all these different rooms she had created, and the hall of mirrors, and they would go there just to socialize and do business.
And that's exactly how she portrayed it in the Blue Book, which was the guide to vice in Storyville. At this point, Josie was a somewhat respectable businesswoman who made a fortune, and she used that fortune to spoil her niece Anna Dubler. Josie went by the alias Mrs. Brady in order to hide her real profession from her niece.
And they all lived with her in a mansion that she bought on Esplanade Avenue, and she kept all of her brothel business completely away from her niece.
Josie took Anna to school in Paris, traveled the world with her. The two enjoyed shopping sprees and throwing lavish parties. Josie spent all of her money on Anna, except one thing she did for herself. In 1911, Josie had an elaborate tomb erected, spending $5,500, which would have been about $149,000 today. She went back and forth with the granite company to make it perfect, so detailed and personal.
And it's so typical of her, rose granite, and it's a bronze statue of a woman that's knocking at the door to be let in and turned away.
After Josie died, Anna married Josie's longtime lover Brady, and the two inherited everything, but it wasn't enough.
And so they sold the tomb, and then they put her in an unmarked vault. Squeezed the last bit out of Josie they could. And how do you do that to somebody when you know that's where she wanted to be, obviously? hang on a second, because I don't want to cry. Like, I don't know why I get so emotional about this. It's ridiculous.
You can see the emotion, that connection. Marita seems to feel Josie's pain. She feels so compelled to return her here back to her intended resting place that she's turned to the family for help.
Josie Arlington is my great-great-aunt.
Josie's
My grandfather was her nephew.
One problem though, the original tomb is occupied.
I'm trying to appeal to the Morales family, but who bought the tomb. And you know, they have really no obligation to accept Josie back into the tomb with them. I think maybe once they heard the story, they would welcome her back into the tomb, but we're having trouble finding anybody that is still around.
From what Marita can find, the last Morales associated with the tomb is in the tomb. There is room for Josie's remains, but it seems there's no relative left to legally allow it.
We just want her back in there. She went through so much trouble to build that, and it's so personal to her. And I just feel it's not right. You know, it was a consecrated area for her, and she wants to be back there.
That's what she wanted to be. Put her back.
So cool.
Marita looked into building an exact replica of Josie's tomb somewhere else on the Metairie Cemetery grounds, but found out it would cost around $800,000. Still, the people involved want Josie to rest in peace. They're adamant about locating Josie's remains and giving her the proper farewell.
It might be a lot smaller than the one she had built, but in one way or another, and I feel like the ground's going to shake a little bit that day.